Hi, welcome back to Carrie's Kitchen. I'm Carrie, this is my kitchen. Today I'm going to be making a garlic and dill salmon as per my mother-in-law's request. I made this for her last birthday. And so here's the recipe, Mom. It's a garlic and dill salmon. We're going to oven roast it. We're going to serve it with a basil arugula rice pilaf. And today the vegetable side is going to be some French green beans with an onion, cremini mushroom, which is a baby portobello, white wine sauce to top the green beans. It's going to be fantastic. I'm also going to serve it with some crusty French bread. And I think, looking at my wine selection, we're going to go with a Pino Noir for pairing. So join me. Let's have fun. All right, first I have my water for my rice going, and my oven is preheating at 375 degrees on bake. My water, I'm doing it as per package directions, Near East rice pilaf, the original. This is the best one. I've tried a million other ones. For this recipe, I would highly recommend the Near East rice pilaf original blend, and you just do it as per package instructions. So you've got a tablespoon of olive oil, 1 3/4 cups water in your pot, and we've got it going until it begins to boil. In the meanwhile, my oven's getting nice and hot, and we're going to get our salmon going. And while it's in the oven, we'll make our mushroom and onion sauce. So I have 3 beautiful salmon fillets. Oh, these are gorgeous. These are already cleaned and ready to go. I always double check for bones, which I already did, but just go over your fillets. Now, often I'll make this as a whole half a salmon. If I'm feeding a big group of people, I'll do 1/2 of a salmon, and it's all basically this, but whole, on a long sheet, and then, or in a baking dish, and then cut it after it's cooked real carefully with a thin knife and scrape it out of the skin. But because I know there's just 3 of us, I got 3 fillets. It'll be easier because I don't have any big plans for leftovers. Aren't they gorgeous? They're nice, thick fillets. So I'm going to set these aside over here while I prep my garlic. Now my garlic and dill salmon, it is very, very, very simple. We are literally using 2 cloves of fresh garlic and some dried dill. You can use fresh dill too. I find that with this recipe, I've been out of fresh dill more often than not, and I've been just as happy with the flavor. Some recipes, I feel like you absolutely need fresh herbs, like our rice today. We're gonna need fresh herbs. But for this fish, I think that a dried dill is just fine. However, do not use garlic powder or garlic salt. You have to use actual garlic. All right, so I've smashed them, taken the skin off. If you don't know that trick, did you see it? I turned it on the side, smashed it, and then peeled it. So now I'm just gonna chop these up. Now, I don't want them too finely diced. I want them diced finely enough that they're not big chunks like you want in certain pasta dishes. But I also want to be able to be able to grab hold of them to sort of wedge them into the meat. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Some sort of a flying insect got into the house, and my dog is on a mission. She is the bug killer. She's like, there's an insect somewhere. Oh, watch, she's on the hunt. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is take my salmon, and I take my knife, and I just poke a couple of holes across real gently. I don't want to destroy the meat. I just want to make little cavities for the insertion of some garlic. I'm not going to use this knife for any more vegetable chopping. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the sink with the tongs I used for the fish so that I can wash them. All right, so I'm going to kind of feel around for those holes and push a chunk of garlic in each of those holes. See, they go right down into the meat. And then, after I do this part, I take the remainder of the garlic and just sort of rub it across the top of the salmon. So this is a garlicky dish, but remember, it's going to get roasted in the oven. It's not like you're going to be eating raw garlic. But it really incorporates nicely into the fish meat this way. There's going to be a difference there really is a difference in the flavor, having poked the salmon with some of the garlic and put it into the meat, because the stuff on the top gets a roasted flavor and the stuff inside absorbs into the meat. Starting from raw, it roasts along with the meat and the fats of the salmon. Salmon is very, very good for you. It's a good heart healthy thing. It's very high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are great for you. And of course, it's a great animal protein. We don't eat a lot of meat in our family, and when we do, it's fish. Occasionally, we'll do Amish chicken from, locally sourced from a local Amish farmer, but generally, we just do fish if we're going to do meat. All right, so now, if you notice, when I put the salmon on here, I put it skin side down with no oil on the pan. The reason being, I want the skin kind of to stick to the pan because I want to remove the fillets from the skins before serving them. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to drizzle a little olive oil over the top. So the skins are already on the pan. They're going to be oil, but then they're not slipping around when I go to remove the fillet from the skin. So I'm just going to take some extra virgin olive oil. You just get some good quality olive oil and drizzle it all across these. Fairly generously. I want them to stay moist and get a little, some good browning from the oil and the fats in the oven. And then I'm going to take a little salt. Kosher salt is what I always use. Touch of cracked pepper. And dill. I do a fair sprinkling of dill. I can still see the meat through it, but it looks a little more heavy, a little heavier than if I were garnishing. If I were garnishing with dill, it would be a light dusting, but I'm also not coating it with dill, if that makes sense. It's right in between. So a nice fair shake of dill on each piece, and then I'm popping that in the oven at 375. This particular fillet, again, was really large, about 2 inches in the middle. So I'm going to put it in for 35 minutes and then check it. It may need to go in for 45, but we're going to start at 35. So I will set my old timer. This oven, this stove, it has a great old timer. It is so 1960s, and even the buzz of it, it's like, it brings back memories of childhood, staying over at friends' houses that had the olive stoves. All right, so now my rice water is boiling. I'm going to add the contents of the seasoning packet of the rice mix first, always. And then the rice, and I stir the rice in, and usually it brings the heat down. So you want to stir it until it comes back to a boil. I know a lot of people decide that they were going to try and shortcut and put everything in before the water comes to a boil, but trust me, there's a reason for it. It's something with the starches. It always tastes better this way. So you let it come to a boil, just like it says, add in the seasoning packet, add in the rice, stir it till it comes back to a boil, lid it, and turn it down to warm low. And then set it for the time. And it says 20 to 25 minutes. So now I already have a timer set for my fish, so I'm going to set a separate timer, probably on my phone, on my iPhone, for the 25 minutes. Just keep an eye. Okay, so next step, my frying pan. We're going to set that on between medium, high, and high. I want a pretty high heat because I want to saute the onions to a nice light caramelization before I add my mushrooms. And this is for my sauce that I'm going to make for the fish. I mean, not for the fish, for the green beans. I'm going to use a small yellow onion. If I was using a medium or large yellow onion, I would cut it in half and just use half of it. So basically, I'm heating my pan while I dice my onion, and then I'm just going to put it right in there as it's ready, as I chop it. I don't know if you saw, there are two ends to an onion. If you don't do a lot of cooking and you're watching this to learn how to do more cooking and you don't use a lot of onions yet, onions go in everything in our house. There are two sides of the onion. There's this side with that little furry rooty thing, and then there's the other side where like the sprouts and stuff grow out of, that kind of sticks out. That's the side you always slice off, turn over, and then cut down the middle on this side. Does that make sense? Because this holds everything together, so as you're dicing, it doesn't fall apart. I'll do that a lot when I get to the ends so that I don't lose anything. You just kind of rotate it and chop in, so you can chop in down to the nub. Okay, so my pan is about ready for my onion. So I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil. Again, extra virgin olive oil, cold pressed. That's perfect. It's not too hot. So I've got my onions in here, and I've always salt as I go. So there's one layer. I'm going to do onion, salt, and a little pepper. This particular sauce or topping that I'm making for the green beans, I am not adding anything besides salt and pepper and white wine, and olive oil is what I'm cooking it with. So that the flavors of the onions and their caramelization and the mushrooms themselves and the white wine speak for themselves. I don't want to cover it up with anything. I don't want to add any extra herbs. There's going to be a lot of flavor with the garlic and the dill in our fish, and then we have the brightness of the basil and the mustardy kind of kick of the arugula in the that are going to go into the rice pilaf. So I think that having something earthy and more grounded is going to be key on those green beans to sort of round out the entire flavor palette. While that's going, I'm going to work on my mushrooms. Now, I've already got most of them ready to go for you. As you can see, I just did these to save time, but here is what they look like. It's a little cremini mushroom, or cremini. People say cremini or cremini, but it's C-R-E-M-I-N-I, cremini mushroom. It's a baby portobello. So they are really rich. I think that they're much more rich in flavor than, say, a button mushroom or a white mushroom. And I'm going to go ahead and dice those up. So I go in half this way, and then turn it sideways, and just across like this. And I want them fairly thin because, remember, we're putting them onto green beans, and I don't want the texture to compete with the green beans. I want it to be more of part of a sauce. I want it to be thin and smooth. All right, so my onions have a really nice caramelization on them. Nothing's blackened, but they're dark brown around the edges of all of them. Nice and golden, can you see? It's kind of hard to get the coloring in that, but some of them are almost black, and most of them are just nice and literally the color of caramel. Fantastic. So that means I'm going to add my mushrooms. Again, thinly sliced, stems on, baby portobellos, 5 ounces. I'm not adding any extra oil to this because the mushrooms are going to release a lot of liquid, believe it or not. I know they feel light and fluffy, but they are born of excess moisture. That's how they grow. So all I'm going to add is a little more salt, because that's important, and pepper, and that's it. And we're just going to let those hang out for a few minutes until they really start releasing some liquid, and then I'll shake it a little bit and stir it and get it going. In the meantime, to store your excess mushrooms, whatever's left over, just take the package that it came in, wrap it in a cling wrap, but make sure to poke holes in it. This is really important, which is why I saved this for actually recording it. Ooh. I'm just poking 4, I'll do 5 little holes in it so that it can breathe. Otherwise, your mushrooms will get gross right overnight. Okay, so my mushrooms are nice and browned. I've been turning them just occasionally. I don't want to mess with them too much and break them apart, but they've gotten browned all over, and now they're ready for deglazing. They're kind of stuck to the pan. So I am adding a Sauvignon Blanc to this, and I'm probably adding almost a full cup. 3/4 of a cup to 1 cup, because what I'm going to let it do is reduce, and I want there to be some sauce left, so that it's not just onions and mushrooms in a white wine sauce that I'm putting on top of my green beans, but that it's a little saucy. So we're going to let that reduce. We've already salted and peppered each layer, and now we've got the white wine on there. So the natural sugars and flavors are just going to incorporate. I don't need to add any more seasoning at all. We're just going to let this reduce, and that's going to become our sauce. Okay, so now my sauce is where I want it, but my mushrooms aren't quite cooked enough. But everything's to generally the right consistency, almost to where I feel like it needs more liquid, but I'm not gonna add more liquid. I'm gonna put a lid on it and turn the heat down and let it hang out while the rest of my stuff gets ready. Now that my salmon's getting closer to done, I am going to slice up my bread while the rice is finishing cooking and the onions and mushrooms are doing their thing. So I'm just going to slice this up just down to the bottom where it's still attached. See? So then the outside will be nice and crusty, the inside will be nice and soft, but you don't have to kill the bread trying to slice it after it's toasted. Et voila. So I'm just going to put this right in with my salmon. I threw it in on the bottom shelf because my salmon's on the middle shelf. We're just going to get that nice and toasty and put it in a bread basket with a linen over it so that it stays nice and warm and ready to eat. All right, so I just checked on my rice and it is perfectly ready. I've turned the heat off, and the next step is going to be adding my basil and arugula. What you do is you add it after the rice is cooked and let it hang out for 5-10 minutes until you're going to eat. So what I'm doing is I'm taking I've got these beautiful big bunches of basil, and I'm going to take, I don't know, I've got these 2 bunches. I'm probably going to use most of it. I'm going to use, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, probably about 20 leaves of basil. So you use quite a bit in this dish. You can lessen the amount if you like, but I've found that basil heavy on this particular rice is phenomenal. Super good. It adds, even just tearing these leaves off, the smell is overwhelmingly fresh and delicious. Oh, love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Especially when you get down to these little tiny guys right here as you're doing the other stuff. Oh, I am telling you, the passion that I have for cooking is like, sometimes I wonder if it's right to love a smell that much. Like, oh my God, this smells so good. All right, so we are going to chop up this basil. I've got the basil all here. It's really not that important that it looks pretty, but so I sort of layered it, and then I'm going to roll it, almost like I'm going to chiffonade it, but I'm not perfectly layering every leaf on top of itself and rolling it real carefully. I'm going a little more country with it. So all the leaves were in the same direction, piled on top of each other, bunched, and then rolled this way. Turn sideways, and then chop it. All right, so then I like to bring it together and just go one time across this way too. And that, my friends, is that. So that's my basil. But I'm also going to be adding arugula. So I'm going to take this and put it in a little bowl on the side so that we can add them at the same time so that the rice isn't getting too much oxygen and then there's not enough steam to wilt the herbs. That's very important. So as you can see, this is probably half a cup after it's chopped, but it was about 20 leaves. I'm going to take about the same amount of arugula out of a pre-washed bag. I really like Trader Joe's organic arugula, and it's already triple washed. So basically I'm just going to grab one nice big handful and put it on my board and do the exact same thing. There's no measurement to this, but if there's going to be more of anything, I want more basil. Arugula is going to have a touch of bitterness, but mostly it's got kind of a mustardy thing happening. There's like a little spice to it, almost like a radish shoot. Not as spicy as a radish shoot, but the same idea. So I'm doing the exact same thing I just did. You kind of want equal parts. So I've got my handful or half a cup in there. I've got a little extra on my cutting board. I'm not adding that. I don't want any extra arugula. I want enough to bring the earthiness, that little bit of heat from the arugula, little spice, but I also really want the brightness of the basil. Now, it may seem like a lot to you, but it's just like if you've ever cooked down spinach, you can start with a giant pot of spinach, and by the time you're done, by the time it all reduces, you've got 3 servings, 4 servings. So don't be afraid. This is the correct amount, I promise. So you put this in here, and again, it looks like you're putting a salad on top of your rice, but it won't be that way in the end. So stir it up with a fork. I already fluffed it because it was done. And you just sort of incorporate it all. And when it's evenly mixed, we're just going to put the lid back on and let it set until we're ready to serve. And you are going to have the best herbed greens and rice dish ever. All right, so I just got the buzzer on my salmon, and I'm going to check it. It looks fantastic. My salmon needs 5 more minutes, so this particular batch of salmon went for 40 minutes at 375, again, very thick fillets. Quite often, as I said before, you're going to cook your salmon for 15 to 17 minutes. It just depends on the thickness of the fillet, what you're working with. Okay, so my salmon is ready. It smells like salmon in here. Nothing's burning, but they're starting to get a little bit of a sizzle around the edges. So I want to take it out because I want to make sure that that center doesn't get too overdone. If you can see these, look, they're perfect. There's some browning on the top and sides. Like the top and ends where the fatty part was, where the oil was, but on the side you can still see a little pink there. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Start plating these up in just a moment. First, I want to let them rest for about 3 minutes, maybe 2, because they're so thick. If they were thinner, I would let them rest for 1 minute. But you don't want to just start scraping them off right away. Just give them a minute for the juices to reincorporate into the salmon. Because these are larger salmon fillets, I'm giving them 3 minutes. I'm going to lightly cover them with a piece of aluminum foil. I do not want to lose some of the crustiness that I'm getting on the top from that olive oil, but I also want them to settle. So I'm just making a nice little blanket, and I'm going to let them rest for 3 minutes. All right, so my salmon has rested, and now it's time to remove the meat from the skin. This is how we do it. I put a spatula right in here between the meat and the skin, and it comes right off because I didn't put any oil under the skin on the pan. And slide it up. Look at how gorgeous that is. I'm going to do this one by you so you can see it. Spatula, flexible one. Right here. Slide it between the meat and the skin. Look at that. Skin's on the pan, salmon's off. Ooh, it looks so good. Smells great too. And they're just firm enough. They don't seem dry at all. I think they're going to be perfect. So now I'm going to take my green beans, put them on the side. And my rice. I just use a large serving spoon. And I'm going to scoop my rice. Put it here to the side. Look at that. Oh. Here are my onions and mushrooms. They're not too saucy because I don't want anything watery on the plate, but I think they're going to be a great accompaniment to our green beans. Rather than tossing the green beans in these, we're going to layer them on top. You can see there's just enough to say, ooh, those aren't just green beans. Those are green beans, right? It just adds the gourmet flair to what you're cooking, and it doesn't take any extra time. I made this while I was already making the other stuff. The salmon had to cook, the rice had to cook, so why not make a delicious topping for our green beans? Here you have a fantastic dinner of roasted garlic and dill salmon with a basil arugula rice pilaf and green beans with sauteed onions, mushrooms, and white wine.